Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome back. This is our third day and our third session in this beautiful series. The last two sessions, we had really fruitful discussion with two of our special guests. We had a, a really nice discussion with Dr. Nisa Islam Muhammad on the first day. And she told us the story of Khawla. And we had a very nice discussion also on the second day with Dr. Bilal Ansari, and he spoke about this beautiful American woman who struggled to get and to gain her rights, and she finally succeeded too. Today we have another special guest, and Kim, would you please tell us who is he?
Absolutely. You are familiar with our special guest, who is Rasul Seifullah, and he has functioned as a Smith Center for Religious and Spiritual Life Community Religious Liaison for the Muslim community. And he's done a number of different workshops with us in the past. And we're always, always happy to hear from him, with our series being called Racial Justice in Islam, Opening Up Our Hearts. It is just the right thing to do to have him as part of it, because that's what he does. He opens up his heart. So we hope that everyone recognizes that we're trying to create a space where we can talk about these issues around justice. What do they look like in practical terms? How do they affect us spiritually? What has history demonstrated for us? What kind of foundation should we be developing going forward? And so this is an opportunity for us to talk about the diversity in Islamic identity. And we expect that he'll probably talk also about Blackness in America too. And I'm going to introduce him before I bring him on. Rasul Seifullah supports Smith's Muslim community, as I mentioned, as a religious liaison. And he previously served as the Muslim chaplain at the Albert and Amelia First Interfaith Center at Westfield State University. He did that for about 3 years. He served as the former resident imam of the Al-Baqi Center for Human Excellence in West Springfield. And he did that for over 20 years. And he's really enjoyed working with disenfranchised groups over his career term. He's worked as an instructor at the Hampshire County House of Corrections and also the Hamden County House of Corrections. And he has worked as a religious leader and organizer with veterans groups. And that's something that he's currently doing now. He is also a veteran himself, and he served as a platoon leader. So he's very familiar in the Vietnam War. So he's very familiar with that population and the specific issues that they're dealing with. And he was born in Harlem. He's a proud New Yorker. And he completed coursework with Hartford Seminary. So he's very passionate about interfaith cooperation and community building. So I'm going to bring him on right now, and then we'll have an opportunity to hear directly from him about our subject matter. Here he is. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Seifullah, there you are.
See you. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, sister.
How are you?
I'm a little under the weather, but I'm okay.
Praise be to Allah. So I see that artwork in the back. That looks great.
My wife is sitting in here with me, and she's smiling because she selected it.
Yeah. Wa alaikum salam. Your voice.
You too.
So we had a few minutes already that we started the broadcast, and we are now moving from the introductions. I know you didn't have a chance to hear it, but we definitely introduced you. And we know that we're focusing on our title or our topic area, which in this case is diversity in Islamic identity. And if you want to intersperse Blackness in America, we understand that as well. So I'll go ahead and I'll just start it off with the first question, and we're going to take it really your lead, Brother Seifullah, whatever it is that you talk about, and then we'll see how our questions unfold. But we wanted to just get a sense, we talk about different stories and stories from the past, stories from the present, and then there are personal stories as well. So can you tell us what your earliest memory is that is connected to race? And what did you learn from that experience, and how that might even connect to diversity in Islamic identity?
I gave a lot of thought to that. And one of the things that brought me into the reality of the diversity in America. And in that diversity, I'm talking about being African-American or Black and dealing with a society that's dominated by Europeans. And I was coming from the hospital with my grandma, and I had an appointment and she took me. And on the way back, the bus was crowded and she found a seat for me. I was sitting down towards the middle of the bus. She was at the front of the bus. And this white gentleman, no pun intended, came over and made me get up and to give him my seat. And I really didn't know what was going on. He just told me to get up. And I got up, listening to adults, being obedient to what I was taught. And if you know any women from the Caribbean, that's where my grandmother's from. And I bet you that was the last Black person that man ever did that to when she finished with him. But that was the first time that I realized there was some tension and some problems and some issues. I still didn't understand, but that was the first one. And a second one that feeds into that is when I traveled south. I grew up in New York. When I traveled south to visit relatives, I remember getting there, I was like maybe 13. They had to teach me all the rules that I had to abide by during that period of the summer that I was staying there. Make sure you say yes, sir, no, sir. Don't look them in the eye. You have certain fountains. They have different fountains. You gotta, that frightened me. That frightened me because I was in a zone that I did not understand at all. So it was frightening. So that's my quick story.
Yeah, that reminds me of the whole story of Emmett Till and what he went through when he went south, but it went completely south.
Mm-hmm.
We know his story. He was murdered by a group of men in the South. And it was, as we know, a made up story as to the reason why it happened, but it all had to do with discrimination, racism, prejudice, however we want to term it. And the first story that you mentioned, what age were you? Then when
6.
your mother stepped in, 6.
6.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't know anything. I was in the first grade. What did I know?
Right. Yeah.
And the thing about it is, I didn't know any white people other than people in authority, teachers, firemen, policemen, business owners, white kids or anything. So that kind of caught me by surprise. And any adult would have told me I had to get up, I would have got up. That's the way we were taught. respect the elders. But I guess it was this racial component, and it was new to me. And my grandmother, if you ever had the opportunity to meet her, you know she's not a woman that you would fool with.
Right. Yeah. So that story really talks about the issue with the races, but there's also the whole issue around identity in the Muslim community. Did you experience anything, not someone giving you a command, but there being a sense of either something different between Islamic identities? Have you seen it? Have you thought about it? What do you think in that area?
Well, I think in America, we have a golden opportunity where we have Muslims from all over the world, all different languages, all different cultures, etc. And now they're here in a plural society. I was fortunate to have participated in this State Department program when they brought Muslims over from Uzbekistan. That's right after the Soviet Union broke up. So they didn't understand a plural society like America. It was just mind blowing to them. But when I looked at that and I looked at all the other Muslims that was coming from everywhere, some migrating to become citizens, some coming here to go to school or part of the profession that they were involved in, they were coming here, but practicing their religion. I think the opportunity is that we can figure out what is and what is not truly Islam. What is cultural based, what causes that friction and conflict, why we don't blend well enough with one another. Because we come with cultural biases and prejudices. And so we see through those lenses. We as African Americans, we kind of fell upon Islam. It wasn't brought here to us except through basically the Nation of Islam. I mean, I couldn't even say Assalamu alaikum, it was foreign to me. Raised Catholic, but I reached a point where that wasn't feeding me the spiritual food that I needed to have to be successful in life. So what I see now is these people from everywhere, and most of them fairly well educated. We're going to start figuring out what is not Islam, and some of the hangups each of us separate groups need to get rid of. But the Quran, which I call just like you have the Betty Crocker cookbook, the Quran is the cookbook of life, the book of life. And right at the beginning of the story in Islam, it's about Iblis bowing down to man. Said, I'm not going to do it. So what is the first sin? Some people say it's disobedience, but I see it as arrogance. And that arrogance causes that friction, that undercurrent in the Muslim communities. So I think just as we need interfaith work, we need intrafaith work. There's some communities that have strong biases against women. You sit in the back, you get out the way, you have nothing to say. Just take care of the babies, or you're Black, you're really an interloper. You're not a real Muslim. You're not from one of these Muslim countries. So you're a guest and you'll always be a guest. And we need to recognize that. And so to me, the first sin, and that we've been carrying on, is the sin of arrogance. Why did not Iblis bow down to man? He had arrogance. I'm better than him. So we've been portrayed as Black people around the world by a people that had no love for us. And I realized that when I was in the service and traveled to other countries, and you see the worst at that time, the worst examples of Black folks being pushed in these places where people had no contact with Black people. So I think to make it short and come back to this conversation, the first thing we need to put in check is that attitude of arrogance. I am better than he. I tell the people in my community, anytime that thought comes into your brain that you feel inherently better than someone else, think of Iblis. You're sounding just like Iblis. I am better than he. I'm better than she. Even Allah said, you're just being haughty.
Right, and that's exactly what I was thinking. That's part of the lesson of pride. And the other say that pride go with destruction, right? And that's exactly what we see with the story of Iblis. The fact that he thought, I'm made of fire, man's made of dust, and
I gotta be better.
Yeah, superior. That's the mindset. And so one of our thoughts around diversity in Islamic identity is going right to the root, which I'm glad that you started to talk about the internal racism that happens within Muslim communities and the cultural biases that you mentioned. Do you think that this idea of arrogance and pride is part of what we are seeing?
Definitely, definitely. And the way you solve it is to bring it out. Expose the problem, not the individual, the problem itself. So here's an issue. And you know, we have to own up to it, our part in it. Because as an African-American man, a Black man, you know, when I meet a Caucasian, I'm very careful of what I say and what I do. Because I know it can come back and bite me in the rear end. And then when they say something to me, I know that I don't take it for face value right away. I got to take it home with me and then dissect it and see what is and what is not. I don't know if you go through that. I've gone through it. And I've learned that that's the best way to approach life when you're dealing with people who don't look like you. Are they really being honest? I met with some Muslims, Shia. Was it Shia Muslims? No. Anyway, they were speaking Urdu. Actually, we were speaking English and trying to work some things out. And then they would go from English to Urdu. And they say, well, we're speaking the holy language. I said, what makes a language holy? I said, but the real issue is that you're being impolite. We're speaking here in English. And every time you got a question or you want feedback, you speaking to your fellows in Urdu and we don't understand and we don't know what you're saying. You know, so that's something that we should learn intra-Muslim communities, is that if we're speaking with people that only speak English, that's what we should be speaking in. Otherwise, you're just being rude. One thing you'll never find that Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, was never a rude person or a disrespectful person.
Right. Yeah.
And
even if you was an enemy.
That's right.
That's true. And actually, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ spoke about that particular attitude and said that it's not permissible for people to speak like their own language, or to speak if they were three. It's not permissible for two of them to whisper to each other. because the third one will feel so like hurt. So it's actually, it's rooted in our religion not to do so. And that happening reflects how people understand in their own way religion. Maybe, or that's what I think, understanding religion from or through the lens of culture as well.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's a big problem.
Yes,
That's a big problem.
yes.
This is the only way it's supposed to be done.
Mm.
And if you do it that way, it's wrong.
Mm.
No, Islam is not as strict as people make it out to be. There's a lot of latitude, and there's very few things that are prohibited. Very few, but we make things prohibited. Everything is halal, or haram. No, there's a whole big gradient going from one to the other.
That's right. Yeah.
That's very true. Yes. You reminded me, brother, of myself. And probably that's the first time I'm telling this story. I grew up in Egypt for 22 years of my life. And then when I got married, I had to move to Sweden with my husband because that's where he was doing his PhD. And I always thought I'm a good Muslim, you know, I'm raised up praying since day one, wearing hijab, knowing what's halal and what's haram. And for me, that was complete Islam. When I went to Sweden and I had to interact with people having different opinions other than mine and coming from different backgrounds, and I've been dealing with everybody. Like in Egypt, I'm just dealing with Egyptians with their own style of thinking that's completely like mine, and we're just homogenous, you know. But in Europe, it's different. So I met the Muslims and the non-Muslims. I met the new converts, and I met the people who are interested in Islam. I met agnostics, and I met others. I met everybody, and only then I became a true Muslim. Only then I understood that Islam is really wide to accept all those differences under its umbrella. It's not the way I was thinking. So yeah, that's very true.
We spend too much time trying to force each other to conform to what we think. And I say that, emphasize, we think is Islam. And a lot of time enforcing that. And instead of embracing and be all welcome. You know, we have a unrealistic view of al-Islam. For instance, we have instant communication today. Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, didn't have this. It had to spread by word of mouth. So he could say something today, it wouldn't get to the far reaches of Islam till 6 months later. And we could play the telephone game here. And you know what that is, right, Sister Kim? You say something to somebody once, have them repeat it to the next person once, and then the last person says what the message was, and 99.99999% of the time, it's completely different. So we had those challenges right at the beginning. We just fell in line and said, this is it. Anything that deviates from what we think it is, not even opening up our minds to say, well, maybe they got a good point here. You know, I always use the example of when does Ramadan come in? And we say the sighting of the moon. But we're getting ready to put people, the Russians and the Chinese are working together to put a station on the moon. If I'm a Muslim, when does Ramadan start for me? I'm on the moon 24/7. I got to rethink what was meant when it said, or why he said identify. It may have just been the focal point for us at that time. But we have battles every Ramadan about who's making the right prediction of when Ramadan is starting.
So those are things that really are, to some degree, irrelevant and not what the essence of the religion is all about and what we have been taught. One of the questions that we had is, why is it so difficult for people to look in the mirror at themselves? And those that do that, what do they learn? How does that assist us in accepting and embracing these Islamic identities?
It's very important. To look in the mirror, you have to put your big boy pants on, or your big skirt on, a uniform on, sister, to be able to look and say, I don't know it all. It's very difficult for me to speak in front of a group of people. I have to really psych myself up. I'm sitting here, you say 5 minutes, I'm in a panic. But I psych myself up. But what somebody taught me was sometimes you have to learn to be able to laugh at yourself. Say, wow, that was dumb. That was stupid. You know, you're not going to be perfect. See, when I say put your big boy pants on, you got to be able to accept, yeah, I do make mistakes. I do make errors in judgment. My interpretation or understanding of the Quran or this verse is not proper. I got to be able to accept that. Then you could be a decent leader. When you realize, you know, you're not God's gift to this planet and you're perfect. My understanding of Islam has grown every day. And that's one of the reasons I love it. It's a beautiful religion.
So how would you describe your understanding of it in your earlier years as a new Muslim, as opposed to now as one who has been in all different kinds of situations and responsible for helping communities, Muslim communities, new Muslims? You've been in the correctional facilities, you've been on college campuses, you've been in the masjid, and you've been working with veteran communities. What's the difference?
I think it's when I speak to those mixed groups, you know, unless, even if it's a specific topic, I come from experiences. So those are real. Those are real experiences. And how I grew when I faced those issues, whether I made the right decisions or not the right decision, it was a moment of growth. And so you hear this from young people, especially in our community, you got to be real. So this is real because this is a real life experience. This is not a theory or anything. In fact, I think some people, especially behind the wall, in the system or in prison, whichever term you want to use, I think it's like going to college. I remember you have physics, and then you had applied physics. One was just pure theory with some examples of the real world. And then the one was taking the theory and applying it to the real world. Two different things. And the same thing with the theory of al-Islam and the applied Islam. And that's where many of us have a breakdown. You know, it's cut and dry, and this is it, end of subject. Just certain things like that, like there's no God but Allah, that's fixed. It ain't going nowhere. Because the whole religion, and I don't like to use the term religion, I rather say way of life. That whole way of life is based primarily on belief in Allah. If you look at the 5 pillars, it starts with belief in Allah. If you look at the articles of faith, number 1 is the belief in Allah. Because if you don't believe in Allah, none of the other stuff matters. It's just foolishness.
Can you talk about, you know, the state of racial justice right now, what we're dealing with in the US and how that impacts you as a believer?
Well, I get peace from being Muslim because I really believe I see some of the errors in the way we're dealing with this issue. And I see some of the things that we should be paying attention to. It's like police brutality. We should have focused on police brutality. That's it. No other question. Police brutality, don't hurt anybody. Don't hurt anybody. And let's focus on that. Asian hate of Asian people, Asian women, that's an issue. But what is it an issue of? It's the issue of racism, arrogance, and it affects us all because Black people are suffering to that. Muslims, because of your religion, are suffering underneath that. We need to be able to come together and work together to solve these problems and stay on point. I was reading earlier this morning about some of the early Muslims and what they suffered, that people just a year, 2 or 3 or 4 years later didn't even encounter those type of things. But they suffered so that it would be easier for the people that came after them. You know, so there's things that we could be doing if we were willing to work together and understand that we don't have to prove who was hurt more. We just don't want any more hurt. No, to nobody. Women, Asians, no Blacks, no hurt to anybody. That's what we should be striving for, instead of us splitting up in the groups. Now we gotta have laws, and I'm being facetious, but gotta have laws to protect Asian people against racism. No, just solve the problem of racism, period. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I do. That's cutting to the chase and not looking at surface band-aid solutions. We're getting right to the heart of the matter, which goes to the heart, goes to the thinking, goes to the Islamic principles that you talked about, you know,
Now,
the Prophet gave us. Mm-hmm.
well, you know, how it's played out is, for us, we got here, you say 1555, recognized as 1619, and we weren't even considered humans until 1865. And they were still trying to hold on to, we were 3/5 of human beings. And then we went from that 65 to current time Jim Crow laws that further pushed us back. And then they projected an image of us around the entire world. So this has been our life for centuries. Not in the last 10 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, for centuries, 400 years. So if I'm an Asian, I can have this experience, but then I can go back home and live my life. I could be a Caucasian and I'll march with the Black folks, but when I go home, I'm going back to my entitlement. Not that they're doing it purposely, but that's the world we live in. So people may have come numb to what Black people are going through, but it's really all people. And the Quran speaks volumes of that. Take the time and read what the Prophet spoke about justice, and when he spoke about arrogance. I should say he revealed to us coming from Allah, but just read what he says, and it's like an eye open that why are we missing these things? And I got something, if you could give me a moment. This is again, happened this morning in my reading. I said, oh no, I gotta save this for Sister Kim. I'm using up my time. Let me let that go. Let me deal with what you gotta deal with, Sister Kim.
Well, now you got us interested.
Yeah.
We want to know what you got. If you can sum it up. I'm wondering if it has anything to do with us accepting being a victim. And we sometimes accept what people put on us because it's hard not to. But I don't know what you had, on the table. Anyway.
But I tell you what, I thought about that, and it's not healthy to play the victim role. You may not see it outside of yourself, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually, that's causing a whole lot of damage within a person to accept that position when you're not a lot more than what your society is allowing you to be. So you can't, you don't want to play the victim.
Right.
You're hurting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's better, and you get better sleep if you just stand up on your 2 feet and stand for what you know is right.
Mm-hmm.
But this comes back to Muslims. Mm-hmm. It's about a brother that he met a brother from in Canada, and he invited the brother to his house. He had questions about Islam. He was new to it, and he was telling his story. And he was taking world religion courses, and I'm gonna get through this as quick as possible. He's taught by world religions. And he said, the moment I saw the teacher doing prostration, sajda, I knew that I belonged to this religion, said the new brother. This is what led him to Islam, a simple demonstration of sajda. Just one act of Islam was enough to make this individual a Muslim. Imagine how many people will be convinced when all the Muslims start practicing Islam completely. We got our own law. It's Brother Rashad called it Burger King religion. We want to have it our way. Special sauces don't upset us. Hold the lettuce, hold the tomato. We want to pick and choose what we're going to do. But if we practice the full religion, we will bring people to us because they'll see us a way of peace. That's why I call it a way of life. The way to live your life. Islam is beautiful.
Well, I know that we're already over time, but I'd like to hunt this very last minute and ask you kindly to give us, or by us, I mean, if I am a college student, give me some practical tips and advice on how to make a difference or how to start fixing things within my Muslim community in the United States or in the bigger society.
I think that the value of the hadith come into play because Prophet Muhammad is taking it from theory to reality. How did he act? How did he deal with things? Like I told the guys in prison, never allow anybody to bring you down to act below where you think your status is. You bring them up to your level. But the thing I tell the students is that you have to be willing to be out there. even if you're the only person that believes a certain thing, if you believe it, you gotta let people know. Because people are making decisions about you, who you are. And behind closed doors, they'll say, she's a real Muslim. You might not get those accolades on the street, but you get it there. So if you're gonna be a Muslim, be a Muslim. Study it, but study the character of the Prophet. You know, that's taught me a lot. He's always courteous. He's always respectful. You know, and all the burdens that he had to carry on his back, he never broke because he believed. But the thing is to follow his example. And you don't need anybody to come after him. He's got the perfect example. He's respectful. And at times you'll see him where today everything is haram. You'll see him, what did he do? He took his wife to see the Africans dance and celebrate Eid in their fashion. He just told her to stand behind him. Is that haram? Would Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, take his wife to do something that was haram? I don't think so. But the point I'm saying is that follow the Prophet's example. Take leaps of faith. It may sound making small of that, but it's really a lot involved. When I say take a leap of faith, it brought me in mind very quickly. I used to jump out of airplanes. That's called, to me, when I look back, that was leap of faith.
Practical application.
Yeah.
That's not theory. That's practical application right there.
Application, yeah. But we have to, in our lives, take leaps of faith. And Allah will reward you 1,000 times over. You may not see it, but those blessings are coming back to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Brother Seifullah. We really appreciate you coming and talking with us and exploring this whole idea around Islamic identity and around Blackness in America, and reminding us how important the Prophet's example is. It reminds me of the hadith that is so central to the faith, to the Iman, when we say that none believes truly unless he wishes for his brother what he wishes for himself. He wishes for, or she wishes for her sister, or she wishes for herself. And that's really the way that we need to live. And we'll be tested, because when you say that, when you declare that, it can't be just theory, right?
No, you have to feel it.
Yes.
You have to truly, honestly feel it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and guess what? When you do those good deeds, I mean, really do it because it's the right thing to do. Think, reflect back on it and remember how you felt when you did it. You just felt good.
That's right.
You know, Prophet Muhammad would be proud of me.
Mm-hmm.
Allah would say amen.
That's right. So thank you so much again. And we really appreciate it. I'm going to just mention what's coming up, where we know that all of our different recordings we put on Facebook and we send it to our students directly. They will have the opportunity to come together to talk about these racial justice issues among themselves and some of the experiences and some of the difficulties, the challenges, and some of the successes that they have experienced as well. And that will be student-led. And we have coming up on Thursday, we're talking to Dr. Jonathan A.C. Brown, and he is from Georgetown University, and he'll be talking really specifically into the history of Islam around, is Islam anti-Black? So that, I think, is going to definitely complement the conversation that we just had here when we're talking about things that are very specific to America. And he'll be going into the history and And we know that it really is all connected, because we can't, history has a way of repeating itself.
Mhm.
So, so with that, Heba, do you have any last words?
Well, thank you so much, Brother Rasul. And while you were speaking, I had in mind this ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. And we have honored the son of Adam. So if that's Allah talking about the son of Adam, so how are we going to deal with ourselves and our fellow brothers and sisters? So we need to think about it. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to have you today. Jazakumullah.
I'd like to say this to you, sister. Stay in touch. You have a lot to offer. Every time I've been in your presence, you brought up some very, very good things, and you have some excellent leadership skills. So we don't want to lose
Thank you.
you. You could be in Sweden, but we got technology. You could be here with us too.
Well,
So
I ask for your prayers and for your dua. Thank you.
Oh, we'll do that. You take care. May Allah bless you and your family. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Kim.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yeah, you take care. I have something for you. I'll give you a call later.
Very good.
Something for you. Wow. Something for you. You take care. May Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.